Well, welcome to the Everyday Discernment Podcast. My guest this week is Mark Batterson. Mark is the lead pastor of National Community Church in Washington, D.C. Mark is the New York Times bestselling author of 22 more, probably more books now, including his newest book, Do It for a Day, How to Make or Break Any Habit in 30 Days. Mark and his wife, Lora, live on Capitol Hill and have 3 children. Mark, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, doing great, Tim. Great to be with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. And I'm excited to talk about your new book. And before we get there, anything else you'd like our audience to know about you or your family?
Wow. Now that you ask, I mean, we did add a COVID puppy to our family here over the last year, but I guess we don't have to talk a whole lot about that, but loving life despite all the challenges. And it's just such an interesting season to do life and ministry right now.
Yeah. How would you describe being a pastor in DC?
Wow. There, I think it was Andy Stanley who said there are problems to solve and tensions to manage.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say that there are a lot of tensions to manage.
Yeah.
We have tried to be a church that crosses the aisle, is multicultural, and that means you're gonna embrace a lot of tension along the way. And so, I think most people, leadership has been hard in this most recent season for lots of reasons, but there's still we're still standing. There's a smile on my face, and I do believe that the best is yet to come.
That's awesome. I love that. And when did you become a Christian and also become a pastor? I'm wondering.
Yeah, 5 years old. My parents take me to see a Billy Graham film called The Hiding Place. And for whatever reason, God used that story, that medium to really impact me. And so it began a spiritual journey. I put my 5-year-old faith in Jesus, and I've been doing it ever since. I actually started my college years at the University of Chicago, was a pre-law major. But there was a defining moment at 19 where I felt this call into full-time ministry, gave up a full ride scholarship, didn't make a whole lot of financial sense or academic sense, but transferred to a little Bible college and tried to plant a church at 22. It's amazing how much you know when you're 22. You have it all figured out. Had to unlearn a couple of things. And then for the past 25 years, had the joy and privilege of leading National Community Church. Started with a core group of 19 people and really believing that God's going to help us impact the nation's capital to the 3rd and 4th generation.
Love that. That's so cool. I don't think I realized that Hiding Place was a Billy Graham production. That's cool. I love the movie, but I just never made that connection. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And my son just watched it recently and read the book. So a good, still relevant today for everyone to watch. So
yeah, it's timeless.
So you kind of answered it, but there's probably another example too, but a time when you had discernment, and obviously leaving a full ride scholarship required godly discernment to figure out, what God wanted you to do and how he's blessed it in hindsight. And a lot of times we don't see the blessing of God except looking in the past and looking at hindsight and looking at his providence through the blessing of just obeying his voice. And so that's the question I ask everybody on this podcast is discernment. Can you think of maybe another time or expand upon that decision you made where you had to listen to God and maybe make a decision that didn't seem, culturally or it didn't make sense according to the world standards, but God was leading you a certain path?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of occasions where I think you have to. Well, I live by this little kind of truism that you pray like it depends on God and you work like it depends on you.
Yeah.
And so I am a big believer that failing to plan is planning to fail. So when you're making decisions, like let's use the logic and reason that God's given us and look at the pros and cons. But I also believe you give the Holy Spirit veto power. And so there have been a lot of occasions where I felt a check in my spirit. Something looks really good on paper, but I just know it's probably not the right thing. So lots of occasions like that. For us, one turning point was that failed church plant. We actually had a 25-year plan. How great is that?
Yeah.
And if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. I think John
That's
Chancellor
right.
said that.
Yeah.
So we had this plan, fell on our faces, but grateful for it in retrospect. I think the cure for the fear of failure is not success, it's failure in small enough doses that you build up an immunity to it. But what it does is it opens you up to other things.
Mm,
And now you're maybe able to discern with a little bit more clarity, because it's not you asking God to bless your plans,
yeah.
it's submitting to his plans. And so I'll never forget Tim packing all of our earthly belongings into a 15-foot U-Haul truck, moving to Washington, D.C. with no place to live and no guaranteed salary. It was scary.
I bet. Yeah.
But there are moments where you feel God leading, and you do your human best to discern it, and you take that step of faith. I think faith is taking the first step before God reveals the second step.
Mm,
And I look back on that move, and it was a faith move. And honestly, yeah, there are probably easier places to do ministry. There are probably places that there's a little bit less tension, but we wouldn't want to be anywhere else. We love living and ministering in our nation's capital. But it's amazing how much of life goes back to those a few major decisions that require tremendous discernment, and then you
yeah.
manage those decisions usually for decades.
Yeah, that's really good, because you are always presented with just one decision at a time, and you might try to think 5, 10 years down the road, but at the same time, that's maybe hundreds of decisions later, and you can't plan necessarily for that. And it's okay to have a plan on paper, but at the same time, you have to be willing to change that plan if the Holy Spirit comes in and has veto power, like you said. And I love that analogy, because yeah, make your plans. God's given us knowledge, God's given us skills, but at the same time, if we're not relying on God for some level of faith and trying to do it in our own strength, then why do we need God? There has to be something that we're believing in, a vision for something greater than just what we can do in our own power, because that's what's safe and that's where our comfort zone is. But God is always pulling us out of our comfort zone, as you will find if you keep walking with him over the years.
So true.
And a big part of staying with Christ is keeping our eyes on him every day. And that's a big focus for me in this season of the podcast and my new devotional, Eyes on Jesus. And so what have you found for you as far as practical ways that you keep your eyes on Jesus every day? Because the world is so full of distractions, more than ever, with social media and the news. And it's so easy to get distracted and to get discouraged if we let those things invade our sanity, if you will. And so there's always boundaries we have to put into place, but also what are we doing in place of it, or to keep us grounded and focused on Jesus every day? And everyone's going to have a different plan of attack, a different strategy. But I think there's a benefit to hearing what other people do, so we can kind of reanalyze what we're doing and is it actually bringing us life. So.
Yeah, yeah. I'll share that habit in just a second, but let me say this. I think the average person spends 142 minutes on social media. That's 2 hours and 22 minutes. That
Yeah.
represents 15% of our waking hours. And the question that I find myself asking these days is what percentage of your words, thoughts, and actions are a regurgitation of the news you're watching and social media you're following?
Mm.
And what percentage is a revelation that you're getting from God's word?
Wow.
I
Yeah.
think this is a moment where it's critical. If we're going to keep our eyes on Jesus, he is the word.
Yeah.
But then we also have the word in the form of scripture. And my lifeline over the last 2 years, the thing that's kept me grounded, the thing that's kept my eyes on Jesus, is a good old-fashioned daily Bible reading plan. I mean, it's not rocket science, but you need a plan.
Yeah.
I've run a marathon. No way I could have run that marathon without a training plan. Well,
Yeah.
in the same sense, if your goal is to read the Bible cover to cover, you probably need some kind of plan. And so, Tim, I have a daily Bible reading plan, and I work the plan.
Yeah.
And when I do that, I think that's what keeps me in lockstep with the Holy Spirit, and it's that daily dose of wisdom and revelation that I need.
Yeah, that's great. We need daily disciplines, and it sounds like we're following rules to the outside. Why are all these rules there? But they're for our benefit. If we follow the and obey what the Bible says, it's going to lead us down a path of blessing. And I preached on this recently, is the importance of being disciplined enough to do the things that you need to do. Just like in I played basketball growing up. You always did the same drills. You always did free throws and layups and 3-point shots. Even if you've done them 1,000 times, you do them again, and you still see the professionals doing it before the NBA finals, because it's what's important. And so the Christian fundamentals that we sometimes think we can move past to our detriment is we want the deeper things of God. We want all these great things, and that's okay. But at the same time, don't neglect prayer and Bible reading and evangelism and all these things that we know we should be doing, but we don't necessarily have habits built in to doing them. And that's why I love the focus of your new book, which is called Do It for a Day: How to Make or Break Any Habit in 30 Days. And I love the ideas of habits and how it relates to discernment and analyzing what we do and why we do it. And so how are the habits that we often have? I think we have a lot of habits under our cognitive radar where we just kind of do them, but if we start thinking about it, we know we're doing it, but oftentimes we just kind of go into this gray space where we're just like the days turn into weeks, turn into months. And before you know it, we're not hitting the goals that we, say verbally that we want to do. So what have you found that how we can often impact the goals we have for ourselves and our family by the things that we do daily?
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, all of us are creatures of habit. And they're big and they're small, they're conscious and they're subconscious. I don't know why, Tim. I always set my alarm to an even number. Do you set your alarm even odd, or you don't care?
Yeah, it's even every time.
Yeah. Well, isn't that crazy? And for whatever reason, I put my pants on right leg first, but I always put my shoes on left foot first. And I don't get it. But and according to a Duke University study, 45% of our behavior is pretty much on automatic. We don't really, once something becomes second nature, we don't give it a second thought.
Yeah.
And in some ways it saves us time and energy. But the danger is that you can get into some bad habits. And so I think there are times where you've got to deconstruct and reconstruct your habits. It might be a morning routine. What I know for sure is that your life is perfectly designed for the results you're getting.
Right.
So let's kind of take a look in the mirror and evaluate some of the habits physically, relationally, spiritually. Are they getting us where we need to go? And ultimately, show me your habits and I'll show you your future. You are what you repeatedly do.
Yeah.
And the good news there is, you're probably one habit away from a totally different life, but you're going to have to really work on it. And so the goal of the book, it's a 30-day habit challenge. Like, you got to do it for a day, and then you got to get up and do it all over again. And the good news is you begin to gain momentum. And, it's those free throws that you shot and that I shot playing basketball. It's muscle memory.
Yeah.
And so habit formation is about cultivating the muscle memory. And by the way, on that note, I think habit stacking really helps us. I'm sitting right above our coffee house here on Capitol Hill. And my day always starts with a small latte, 2 shots. And what I do is I habit stack my Bible reading with my latte drinking, because Bible reads a little bit better with caffeine. And so it's about finding creative ways to couple our habits and then create that muscle memory.
That's really good. And it's amazing how many things we do. Just think about driving to the same place, driving to work, driving back home. You don't think about every single turn because it's built into our cognitive discipline to just drive that same drive. And that's why I talk in my book. We make thousands of decisions every day, and most of them are habit-based, just things that brushing your teeth, walking downstairs, opening the fridge, things that just we do as part of routine. And like you're saying, is start to insert things that are going to lead you down a different path. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately, just in the past couple of weeks, is if we do the same things we've always done, we're going to get the same results we've always gotten.
Yep.
And that's so powerful because we start to complain about things, and yet we don't put things into practice to actually change them, things that we have the power to change. And if you don't have the power to change them, then it does no good to complain about them. But the things that we say we want to do, like, I wish I read the Bible more, but if we don't actually put into practice a specific goal to get there, then they're just words. And so what is the power of actually writing down a vision and having other people hold you accountable to that?
Yeah, I think writing something down has two effects. One is clarity and the other is memory. So, 1 Corinthians 10:5 says, take every thought captive, make it obedient to Christ. One way to do that is with the 26 letters of the English alphabet. Let's use gratitude as an example. If you are trying to cultivate an attitude of gratitude, what you need to do is write those gratitudes down in a journal, because it forces you to be precise in what you're grateful for. And then the shortest pencil is longer than the longest memory. If we don't write it down, we're going to forget it. And so certainly a big believer in writing these things down, whether it's a dream journal, gratitude journal, it's a vision board, whatever that is, there's a certain power in writing it down. In fact, a little bit of a sidebar, Tim, but I've always found it fascinating that Deuteronomy 17, the kings of Israel were required to make a copy of the law in their own handwriting. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, you got places to go and things to do. You're the king. But they were required to make their own copy of the scripture. And I think part of that is when you write something, in psychology, it's called the generation effect. That it's going to be more memorable, more personal, because you put it into your own handwriting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't even realize that the kings were required to do that. And that makes so much sense, is not just regurgitating the same thing or going through the motions, but actually being intentional. I'm reading the book now, The Intentional Father by John Tyson, and it's so important of just the intentionality of, hey, I want to be a better father, but actually, how am I going to do that? What steps am I going to take? It's not going to happen overnight. But at the same time, today is, I hate the saying, but I use it a lot, is today's the first day of the rest of your life. And so if you want something different, do something different. And legacy, we hear so much about legacy too, and it's talked about so much, but our habits have a legacy attached to them. And you say that our habits are not just about us as individuals, but they are about loving God and loving others. And so how do our habits impact those around us in ways that we may not realize?
Yeah, I think there are some habits that if you're only doing it for yourself, they're really hard to make or break. You need to realize that your actions have an epigenetic effect to the third and fourth generation. And I'll give a simple example. My dad was a chain smoker before I was born, and then he quit cold turkey. That's not easy to do.
Yeah.
Well, I think what enabled him to break that habit was that he wasn't doing it for himself. He was doing it for his kids. And so I think there are habits that we tend to think of it in a pretty self-centered way. And in a sense, it is, habit formation has a lot to do with self-leadership. But I think we've got to make or break some habits for our spouse, for our kids, for the organizations we lead, for the grandchildren that we may have someday. Like, I think legacy is not what you accomplish, it's what others accomplish because of you.
Wow, that's good.
And so it's this idea, and discipleship is growing fruit on someone else's tree. So it's this idea that how can we do what we do with an eye towards that third or fourth generation? And I think, you hit the nail on the head. The intentionality is right at the heart of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really powerful to think that. And I think in a selfish nature, like you're saying, it's easy to think that what I'm doing just impacts me. It doesn't affect anyone else. But there are going to be things that other people see, that you may not even realize. If you have an anger problem or a lust problem or a drinking problem, it's just my personal sin. I'm dealing with it. It's between me and God. Well, there are lots of things that come out of that you won't even realize subconsciously that are going to impact your family, your friends, those around you. And so we have to make sure that we're setting goals for ourselves that lead us down a path of blessing, not just for ourselves, but for our future. And so that's why I'm curious, how do we discern the goals we have for ourselves? Because there's so many things we could choose to do. There's so many habits we could pick up. How do we know if we're doing a bad habit? And then how do we choose a good habit in its place? For example, like I want to start working out more. I want to start eating right. But at the same time, like, where do I start? How do I begin doing that? And do I even want to focus the time on that when I could be doing other stuff? How do we kind of discern that whole sometimes lies we tell ourselves, regarding habit formation?
Yeah. Well, can we have a little bit of fun and just, since that's the example that you bring up, why don't we talk it through? Because I bet there's a lot of people that either want to exercise more, or perhaps the other one is eat less.
Right.
It has a lot to do with our physical health. I would back up and say that there's a theology behind it, that my body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. That in itself is motivation
Right.
to take care of the temple. And so it starts, I think, with kind of a mindset. But then part of what I break down in the book is that you have to 3M every habit. You have to make it measurable, meaningful, and maintainable.
Mm.
Getting in shape is a hope, not a habit.
Right.
Now, if you tell me how many pounds you want to lose or how many miles you're going to run, now it's measurable.
Yeah.
And then when I say meaningful, I think extrinsic motivation dissipates pretty quickly.
Mm.
I think part of it is like we need to be discipled at the level of our desires. And I think a habit has to become part of our identity. So instead of saying, I'm going to run a marathon, you have to start thinking of yourself as a runner. Well, that's a whole different mindset. The habit has to become your identity. And then finally, it's got to be maintainable. I think you have to break it down in a way that you can gain momentum every single day. And these things happen in a variety of different ways. Do you know the name R.T. Kendall? He's written a bunch of books,
Oh
former
yeah.
pastor of Westminster Chapel in London.
I think my wife's reading one
And
of his books now.
yeah, brilliant author. I had a chance to have lunch with him recently, and he told me when he was 70 years old, he got a prophetic word. Someone said to him, "You're going to live to a ripe old age, but you won't enjoy it if you don't get into shape."
Wow.
And he's 86 years old now.
Wow.
And that day at 70, he started doing 21 push-ups a day, Tim.
Mm.
And I walked away from that lunch convicted because I thought to myself, here's someone who is walking the talk. What I'm getting at is, yeah, you're right. You've got to make that habit measurable and then make it part of the rhythm of your life so that it literally becomes almost like second nature.
Yeah. That's very close to what we did in the business world when I was in management as SMART goals. Those are what people use:
Yeah.
specific, measurable, actionable, relatable, no, something, and then timely. So very close to that. Don't just say like, I want to do this, but actually what does it look like when you lay it down? And I think it's important for us to be realistic with ourselves, because working out, for example, I'm not going to work out the same way I did when I was 25, when I was 30. And a lot of times I'm like, well, if I can't work out at that level, then why even try? And so we talk ourselves out of these good habits. Well, I want to read more. I want to pray more. It's like, well, I can't pray for an hour a day like this person, so I'm not even going to try. Well, why can't you pray for 5 minutes and then 10 minutes, or maybe just do 10 minutes every day for the rest of the year and see what that does for you? And so I think comparison also kills our contentment, and we start to look at other people and their platform and their process and say, well, I can't do what they do, so I'm not even going to try. And do you feel like that sometimes we self-sabotage in that kind of way when it comes to habits?
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in hacking other people's habits. It's why I love reading biographies.
Yeah.
I try to really study people and certainly almost reverse engineer how do they do what they do. So, but the thing we have to be really careful of is i- habits are as unique as you are.
Mm.
I think, Tim, I feel like everybody ought to have a handful of quotes that they quote all the time. And
Mm.
one of them for me is in Oswald Chambers. He said, "Let God be as original with others as he was with you."
Mm.
And
Love
so
that.
what I try to do is, when I even unpack my habits, whether they're writing habits or exercise habits or communication habits, whatever they are, I always try to say, now this is descriptive of how I do it,
Mm.
but it's not necessarily prescriptive of how you should do it.
Right.
And so, in a sense, you hack other people's habits, but then you have to put a fingerprint on it. You've got to own it, and it has to own you. And part of that is I write a little bit in the book about creating a rule of life. This idea that is both biblical, I think,
Yeah.
but really dates back to Saint Benedict. I think it's 529 AD, maybe, when he composed those 73 rules of life, so to speak. I think each of us needs to um, really create, identify core beliefs, core values, daily
Yeah.
habits, things that are going to ultimately help us become the person that God wants us to be. And that's a long, hard process. That does not happen overnight.
Yeah.
But I think it's absolutely critical.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say to anyone listening who feels stuck, feel stuck in a bad habit, in a sin that they keep saying they'll never do again, but then they go to, repent on Sunday? And I've been there, so I know I'm not trying to downplay anybody that's going through it, but at the same time, it feels like sometimes you're just spinning your wheels. What would you say is a good first step for someone who is feeling that frustration?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it happens to me all the time. All of us get into slumps,
Yeah.
including spiritual slumps. In my experience, you go back to basics. You go back to certain spiritual disciplines that might be able to help jumpstart. If it's me, I might go on a prayer walk.
Mm.
Just spend an hour with the Lord and just take a long walk, and I need to hear your voice. Or
Mm.
I might kickstart something with a 24-hour fast, and I'm just going to mix things up. I think that's half of it. There's something called the law of requisite variety that, if you go to the gym and do the same exercise the same way every single time, it loses effectiveness
Yeah.
because your muscles adapt to it. And so, in a weird way, you have to confuse your body. And that's what trainers do.
Yeah.
They confuse your body so that you actually break down and build the muscle back up in a little bit different way. I think we've got to practice that ourselves. Like Tim, I mentioned that I do a daily Bible reading plan where I read the Bible cover to cover every year. The thing I didn't mention is I do a different translation every year,
Mm.
because I want my synapses to fire a little bit different way.
Yeah.
And so picking up whether it's King James or NIV or NLT or Amplified, what it does is it kind of initially confuses me a little bit, like, oh, that's not how it read with
Yeah.
last year's Bible. But that's part of the process of growth. On that note, I feel like as a pastor, my job is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And in a
I love that.
sense, get people out of that comfort zone, because that is when and where and how we actually experience spiritual growth.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to use that line. Afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. That's great.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, you do have a bunch of powerful stories in your book too about historical figures and the habits that they formed. As we start to close out here, is any one that kind of comes to mind that you can share that is would be interesting?
It's interesting. I don't know, the one that comes to mind is Benjamin Franklin, of course, pretty famous for those 13 virtues. He might have kept the first habit journal. He was very he took the idea of self-leadership to great extremes.
Mm,
But one thing I might just throw in the mix right here is that it's a team sport, Tim. Day 27, it takes a team. I share some stories, one from the Renaissance from Leonardo da Vinci, and the workshop that he was a part of, that art was very much a team sport
mm,
hundreds of years ago. But I also share a story about Benjamin Franklin. He formed what was called, I think, the Leather Apron Club. And it was this cross section of people from different occupations that would gather on Friday nights. And it was all for kind of the sharpening of one another, the way that they were thinking. And so I guess, I can't remember who said we become the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. I'm not
yeah.
sure that there's a study to back that up. And so since there's not, I usually say we become the average of the 12 people we spend the most time with, just to kind of tip the cap to
Yeah.
Jesus and his disciples.
Right.
The bottom line is this. You got to surround yourself with people who are going to challenge you, who are going to get in your business, but they're also going to stretch your faith.
Yeah.
And so this whole thing, and even the idea of discernment, right?
Yeah.
There is wisdom in the multitude of counselors. Like, you don't have every sight line. You need some people in your life that are going to see it slightly differently. And that's part of the journey that all of us are on.
Yeah, that's so good. And that's, one of the sources of discernment I talk about is godly relationships, and not just any relationship, but actually specific ones, people that are following God, hearing from him, who can engage with you, who can pour into your life, who you can be a sounding board. And sometimes we need people in our life that are not like us, who have different routines, who have different habits, who are doing different things, because, we don't want to always be in an echo chamber either of the same type of people. And so for me personally, I found having what we call a covenant group of guys, 5 guys that we can meet with monthly and see them throughout the month, who I can feel comfortable talking with. And I didn't have that my whole life. And I see the benefit of it now. And I think as guys too, we're like, I don't need that. I don't need a bunch of guys just telling us about feelings, but at the same time, if we're humble and open about it, we're going to see benefits in things that we might just dismiss, with sarcasm, or just because we haven't experienced it before.
So good.
Awesome. Well, we're almost at the end of our time. You have a lot of great resources. I love your books, The Lion in a Pit with the Lion on a Snowy Day, and Chase the Lion. Those are awesome. People probably know you for those as well. And I would encourage everyone to check out the resources you have. Where can people connect with you and also get your new book?
Yeah. MarkBatterson.com. We've got some samples of the book, as well as some resources. And then, of course, book is available wherever books are sold. And, I genuinely, Tim, I feel like, and, maybe you feel the same way as an author, the beautiful thing about a book is it's a way for me to spend 5 or 6 hours with someone. And it can be on your terms, on your timeline. You can take me on an airplane, or take me to the beach. But one way or the other, just praying that this book would help us make and break some habits, because I really do believe that over time, show me your habits, I'll show you your future.
So good. And I love how it ties to discernment and the things we're talking about in this podcast. I would encourage everyone to get that book. I'll put it in the show notes, as well as your website. And so I want to thank you, Mark, so much for coming on. God bless you and your ministry and your family.
Thanks so much, Tim. God bless.
Thank you for listening to the Everyday Discernment Podcast. For more information on Discerning Dad, go to discerning-dad.com. Be sure to follow on all the social media platforms. Just search for Discerning Dad. Please share this podcast with a friend and leave an honest review on whichever platform you listen. Feel free to send any comments, suggestions, questions, or prayer requests at discerningdad@outlook.com. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight.